committee meeting, April 1st, 2015. Can we have a roll call?
Calling the roll, Ms. Simon,
Here?
Ms. Brown,
Here.
Mr. Jones,
Here.
Mr. Schron,
Here.
Mr. Brady. Mr. Brady is absent. There is a quorum. Also like the record to reflect that council members Miller and Greenspan are in attendance.
Thank you very much. We have some minutes in front of us from March 25th. Do I have a motion to adopt the minutes?
So moved. Second.
Motion's approved and adopted. Public comment related to the agenda, Madam Clerk?
No, Madam Chair, no one is signed in.
Okay, we have an ordinance that was referred to committee. Can you read that?
Ordinance number 2015-0008, an ordinance amending section 804.02 of the Cuyahoga County Code to incorporate changes to the Cuyahoga County College Savings Account Program, amending section 207.03A to incorporate changes in the powers and duties of the College Savings Account Program Committee, and declaring the necessity that this ordinance become immediately effective.
Thank you very much. Just as an order of our meeting today, this was designated as a date on which we're going to discuss the status of the Cuyahoga County College Savings Account, as well as to consider and discuss Councilman Greenspan's legislation that was referred to committee. So at this point, I'd like to have somebody from the administration update us on the status of this, this initiative.
Good afternoon, Ken Surratt from the Executive's Office. Here to give you an update on the College Savings Account Program, as well as once we get into the proposed legislation, to answer any questions about that or as well. So first, I'm just kind of give you a quick history, just to kind of remind people of the college savings. I like to start with that just to make sure we're all on the same page. I'll talk you through kind of some updates and metrics on the program. I want to talk a little bit about the college savings landscape. I feel that's kind of appropriate given that we're going to, there's been some proposed legislation, and then just kind of leave you with some, I think, final things to think about as you think through this new or address this new legislation. So the college savings program is wasn't just a program just to create a program. I think you all know that the charter does provide some guidance that the county will do scholarships or loans or something to help encourage its residents to complete post-secondary education, and that's college, 2-year, 4-year, trade certificates, whatever. And I think what's really important is to think through what the intentions of what this was supposed to do. And the goals really were to address what was in the charter, increase the number of post-secondary degree holders in the county. I think this is something former Executive Fitzgerald always said was he really wanted to send a universal message about the importance of post-secondary really at an early age so that it was on people's radar that it is a possibility and something that is important to strive for. And then I would say the other point that we tried to get across with this is really encourage savings and better financial management. And an example of that could be really trying to get people who are unbanked or underbanked into the banking system as an example of that. And this program or this model was really, I think, one of the driving reasons for the former executive to propose this was that there is some research, it's limited but growing, about the effect of having a college savings account in a child's name, and that those children are 7 times more likely to attend and actually go through college than those who don't. So that's, again, what I kind of want to start off was the kind of basis of kind of how this came about, and I think what the general intent that we were trying to address that was in the charter. So quick timeline, it was announced in 2012, November 2012. I believe the first reading of the legislation, it was my very first day at the county. I remember it fondly. Was in February 2013. Ordinance adopted in April. The budget was approved in October. And in May of last year, we rolled out the first cohort. We're actually in the process now of rolling out the second cohort. We had anticipated getting it out earlier, of course, but there were some getting data from the school districts definitely is taking longer than expected, as it did last year as well. And then this being the kind of next step, there were some technical things with KeyBank and the way that they built the accounts that needed to get worked out. So we're in the process of doing that. So the data I have for you is really just on that first cohort that's had their accounts for clearly less than a year now. But I will, a quick summary. Last year we created 10,500 accounts. Those were all the public school districts. Last year, getting the private parochial charter data was the challenge. So of that, and this year we expect that number to be more in the 13,000 range, assuming that the district attendance is comparable to last year. So of the accounts that have been created, just under 400 have been registered for an account, and that's really going on our online portal. And that allows them access to see their accounts, as well as it gives us an opportunity to interact with the people who are using the account. So, for instance, as they register, we actually ask a lot of demographic information so that we can get a better idea of who this is really appealing to. We feel that would be helpful for the program. As of now, we have 55 unique depositors that have deposited a total of just over $18,000. We've had 22 people opt out, and just this week it was confirmed we will be actually transferring 4 accounts to 529 plans. I know that was and we'll talk more about 529 plans, I'm sure, later today, but we actually do have that provision where after people put in or get to a $500 account balance, that they can transfer the money to a 529 plan. So it's a way to still, we feel the 529 plan is still very much aligned with kind of the intent, getting people to save for college, and those who feel more comfortable with that, this created the opportunity for them to do it.
Can you repeat the number of people who transferred to the 529 plan?
There's 4 so far. Yes. So if you look at the number of people who, or kind of where people are registering, like what districts, clearly the bigger districts are the ones where we have the most people, kind of just in absolute numbers. So Cleveland, Parma, Shaker, Berea, Cleveland Heights. So those are in kind of absolute numbers. But when you look at the actual percentage of each one of those districts, their kindergarten cohort, you actually see a little bit of a more interesting picture. For instance, Independence, Orange, Cuyahoga Heights, they have a higher percentage of their kindergarten cohort that are using the account than Cleveland, because they have smaller classes, but it seems to have a larger cohort within those communities are actually using or the account. So it's an interesting spread, because it's not, I think, what at least intuitively to me I would have thought. I would have thought that inner city, the Cleveland inner ring suburbs would be the ones who would probably gravitate more to this type of account. But there's actually, I think, a good mix of all the county, to tell you the truth. Both the outer ring suburbs as well as inner ring suburbs are actually registering for these accounts. And so, as I mentioned before, we do try and capture some demographic information as we get people to register. And again, we're trying to see who is really using this, and if it does have some sort of appeal to one group or another, or if there is kind of a universal adoption. So, as I just said, I think in terms of districts and geography, there is kind of a mix, definitely. But I think that it continues when you start looking at the demographic profiles. So looking at of those who acknowledge their race ethnicity, 39% are African American. These are the ones of people who have registered. 47% Caucasian, 5% Latino, 5% Asian. 4% Asian, and 4% other. Household income, 22% have stated they make less than $25,000 a year. 25% between 25 and 50. 14% between 50 and 75. 16% between 75 and 100. And 23% make over $100,000, have household incomes over $100,000. So I think you see both in race, ethnicity, and household income a spread that is probably somewhat reflective of the county. If you look at the highest, we also ask about the highest educational attainment of the adults in the home. What we see there is that actually 30% of people have a master's degree, 25% a bachelor's, 14% an associate's, and 22% some college. So that's only 10% with a high school diploma or less. And just to kind of give you a benchmark, it's about 35% from the last census of the county residents have an associate's degree or higher. This is saying that we have almost 70% of the people here that are registered for the account have a associate's degree or higher. And then the other one that I think is really interesting, and it goes to that the intent of trying to help people get into the mainstream banking. We actually ask about historic relationships with the bank. And of those, again, that have registered, 14% have acknowledged that they were unbanked. So this could be, and to me, I think that shows a real opportunity to really try to get people into the mainstream banking system. This account could be an opportunity to do that. 63% or 62%, sorry, do have both a checking and savings. So they, 2/3 of the group does. But I think that 14%, I think, could really be an opportunity to get some of our really low-income people to start getting into the mainstream banking and practicing better financial habits. So that's really, I think those are the main data points on the actual accounts. If I can entertain, again, I think a little bit to give you a little more context on the college savings landscape nationally. This is not the only college savings program in the country. CFED, the Corporation for Economic Development, which was our consultant kind of to start examining this project a couple years ago, has been doing have been seeing that these have been growing around the country. And they actually, so much that they created a directory so that people would know. And 31 states have programs. There's 45 total college savings programs within 31 states across the country. And the majority of these actually use, so 13 out of those 45, let me do it that way, use a 529 plan. The others use some sort of kind of a bank or a bank account more similar to what we do. Kindergarten and college in San Francisco being, an example of that, but there's many others around the country. So it's growing. I will tell you, I've fielded calls from people from Iowa to Wisconsin, Hawaii, Rhode Island, when they took theirs from being a opt-in and changed it to an opt-out. I've spoken to, there's a group, I said Wisconsin, St. Louis, Milwaukee, the city of Milwaukee, and there's a group a statewide group in Wisconsin that's looking at this as well. So there's a lot of interest in this type of account, and I think the growing college costs are what's really kind of getting people to start thinking like what can we do differently. I think people are looking at it at all levels. You see school-based ones to county-based to statewide ones. And it's something that's on people's mind. How are we going to afford college? And some people see some sort of college savings account or child savings account as a way to help offset that cost. Many of them do have some sort of public or kind of dollars put in. There's a lot that do both a public-private with some private, the incentives possibly coming from the private sector. So there's a nice mix of these type of programs, and I think they're all trying to figure out how best to tackle this college cost nut, and it's difficult, and I don't think there's any one silver bullet. I think even just looking at what we have here in the county, we have multiple ways. We have the College Now, we have the child savings, we have the workforce, the educational assistance program as well, both sections of that. So I think people are trying multiple ways to address this. Just some information this is from the How America Saves for College 2014 report, which is Sallie Mae's national annual survey of parents about college savings. One of the things, the big thing in it is people just feel it's hard to save. It's a lot of income. People feel they don't have the income to save is a big part of the theme. Another thing that I noticed in this is that particularly if you look at the parents with children ages 0 to 6, and that's kind of the range in which we're looking at the college savings program. They had a chart that showed that 13% of the families with children in that age range plan to save within a year. Another 38% said, well, within 5 years. But then you have 12% that have no plans to save at all, and another 30% that have no idea. So in this age range, people aren't thinking about saving for college right now or feel that they can't. There's some, it's like maybe in a few years. So I think, and I say that just to give some, I think, context to why, you could argue, are our balances low, or any of these, are people not saving enough? I think what this chart told me is that it's people need a few more years to save. Or that there's got to be other, or they feel they need to have the income in order to start saving. Another interesting data point in this report is that just kind of where people saved and how they saved and what they used. And actually 45% of those surveyed, first, let me back up. The majority of people use multiple methods to save for college. So it could be savings accounts, 529s, their own checking accounts. Some people use their retirement accounts. But by far the biggest vehicle for saving is a general savings account. 45% of the respondents mentioned that they use those for savings. So it's and with that, I just saw a fairly recent article, September of 14, and it's from Bloomberg. Why 97% of people don't use 529s. And one of the reasons I think people generally save in savings accounts is the flexibility of them. Once you have the money, if there's an emergency, a low-income person, it's great to have this 529 saving it for college, but if you didn't have insurance and your house burned down and you needed money, if you try and take the 529 money out, you get taxed and penalized on top of it. So there's some concerns about that. There's also some concerns about putting their money at risk in the market after the last recession. And I think a lot of people aren't necessarily educated in it, as well as fees eating up part of that return. I think generally 529s do have better returns, but there are some fees that offset that. So, so that's, again, I just wanted to share some just more data points around kind of the general college savings landscape, as well as kind of give you an update on what our program is doing. But the kind of takeaways that I want to leave you with are, one, it's still early, I think, for our program. Students have had accounts for less than a year, and it's it's hard to do any kind of empirical research with limited data. There are, I think, some early indicators that show some broad representation, both geographically as well as kind of demographically around the county. College savings interest is growing around the country. People really want to figure out how do we best help people pay for college. 529 plans are good for some, but not everyone. Just to remind, the December 2012 report from the GAO that said 3% of people use it, and looking at the demographics of those who are more likely to use it, and actually how College Saves confirms this as well, is that it's mostly high income and white individuals that are using 529s. That's the majority of the people using it. And the last point really is that the research shows that families start saving as the kids get older. So, again, going back to that first point, I think it's early. Kids are just starting school. It's hard to, I think what we would like to see them do is actually start thinking about it as a connected pathway to post-secondary. But I think that it's a cultural shift that I don't think has really happened yet anywhere, not just here. And I think there's other things that are happening that I think we need to pay attention to. The president's proposal to make community college free for everyone. How is that going to impact this, or the cost of college for people? So I will stop there and be happy to take any questions from you all. Turn it back over to you, Chair.
Well, thank you very much. We appreciate the background, the history, and where we're at. Before I entertain questions from the committee and those present, I just wanted you to quickly walk through this process. So it's an opt-out program, meaning
Correct.
that the first cohort was 14, 15. So every kindergarten student in a public school had an account opened in their name?
So the first cohort is at 13, 14.
I'm sorry,
cohort,
13,
yes.
we're in 14, 15. Yeah.
So the actual accounts opened were for the public district students only. In this cohort we're going to roll out, we were able to go back and actually capture a lot of those non-district students. So in this next cohort, we'll actually be catching up some of those students from the first cohort
Okay.
as well.
So what happens is Key Bank actually opens what actually happens? Tell me what happens.
Sure. We get data files from the school districts, and it's kind of facilitated through the ESC of Cuyahoga County and the North Coast Council, which is an ITC, and they provide a lot of data services to districts, local districts. We take that information. We then to get the census.
Who's we?
Sorry, that would be myself and our person who's based in Treasury, Kevin Jablonski. So we take that data, import it into VistaShare, which is our main database. From there, we send a limited information to KeyBank, just to make sure there's no identifiable information for them, and then they create the actual accounts. Once they create the accounts, those account numbers come back to us. We populate, our database with the new account numbers, and then we have a printing company that we send information to that creates a welcome letter with the account card on it, as well as we include a brochure about how to make deposits, as well as a book of deposit slips to make it easier for people to make deposits.
So do people need to send something back confirming, when you say there's 400 people, what happens after they get the welcome letter with an account number?
So as soon as the accounts are created, they're actually live. So they don't need to register in order to actually make deposits. The registration really is, again, a tool for them to be able to view account activity, again, and as a way for us to communicate with the people and the participants. We actually have had people make deposits that have not registered accounts.
So when you talk about 400 registered, those are people that registered, but don't have to have their account open and alive and have $100 sitting there?
Correct.
So all these 10,500 accounts have $100 sitting there?
They do.
Okay. Questions from the committee, Mr. Schron?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. The $18,000, is that what I understood has been deposited?
Correct.
And how much of that went to the 529 with the 4 that left?
So those 4 were they all $500? So 2,000.
So of the 18,000, we still have 16,000 roughly?
Yes.
That's on deposit. And that's of the 55, so now we're down to 51 depositors? That would, if I'm doing the math, is that correct?
Correct.
So roughly less than 1% are participating right now in a deposit.
Yes.
It's a half
That's
percent.
the math. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a 0.5%. And 10% of those folks have already left. Almost 10% of those folks have already left the program. 4 out of the 55. Just
Correct.
10 would be 5. So
Correct.
it's
I thought you were talking opt-outs, but yes. So
yeah. I'm
the ones that
just
transfer.
trying to get a handle as to how that always dictates to me as to whether people like what's going on. Once they got to a $500 threshold, they left. Those 4 people.
Right.
And we don't know how many of the 55 are at the $500 threshold that don't have the ability to leave yet.
I don't have that in front of me, but I can look and
Do we have any?
see. That are not at the $500
Yeah,
threshold.
I mean-
Yeah, I'm sure there definitely are. There are people maybe who've made $10 a month deposits for the last 9 months. Who probably have 100 of their own dollars in.
So they're not. They aren't even eligible to leave yet.
Correct.
To go. Okay. So it'll be interesting to see when people hit $500, how many of them are leaving to go to the 529 program.
I think it would be a good thing, to tell you the truth, to see people. And I mean, I think if you think about the spirit of trying to get people to start saving for college, the 529, if they feel that's a better vehicle for them, it's still, I think, consistent with what the intent of this program is.
Yeah, because I think I understood your comment was that the need for income is what really starts the savings. It's not the $100.
Well, people.
I added the
there's
second
two-
half of that sentence.
Okay.
Your first half was that they need income before they're going to start saving.
In How America Saves for College, in that report, it highlights that the majority of people don't save because they feel they don't have the income to save. What I think the reason that not just our program, but many of the college child savings programs around the country actually do some sort of initial deposit is for two reasons. One, to kind of jumpstart the savings, and two, to take a hurdle of actually creating an account out of the hands of people. Procrastinate. The reality is people procrastinate, and or don't feel they know the steps to create the account, and that creates a hurdle in itself to saving. So again, we have 14 people that were unbanked. 14% of the people who registered were unbanked. I don't know why that is. I don't, but possibly they didn't know how to open a bank account. Would they have done this otherwise? I mean, we've made it easy where now they can just walk into a bank, give $5 in a deposit slip to the teller and start saving. So I think that's why people do the initial deposit to help jumpstart that, as well as to kind of take away the hurdle of, to some, of opening an
That's
account.
14% of the 10,000 or 14% of the 400?
Of the 400.
Okay. And I can just tell you from personal experience, we have a lot of people that are unbanked in my business, and they just don't like banks. So don't be surprised.
true.
They're cash only. They take the paycheck and go to the, unfortunately, you don't cash that. Of the states that have 529 plans, how many of them have multiple plans running simultaneously?
You mean a 529 as well as some other college
Yeah, some other
savings
vehicle like ours.
I don't know that off the top of my head. I can look at the directory. The directory does have all that information and get that
I'd
to
be
you.
just curious how many are running multiple plans at the same time. And then,
And they may not be statewide again,
yeah, right.
but it might be like a school or a county but the state might have a 520
Sure.
plan as well. Okay.
What was the earnings on the $18,000 that was in there for last year? That the people earned?
In terms of interest,
Yes.
it's minimal. I don't have that number off the top of my head, but
Probably less than 1/4%?
oh yeah,
Yeah.
it's less than a quarter.
Thanks.
So Councilman Miller, Greenspan, and then I'll go to my left.
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Surratt, we put a lot of time, effort, discussion, consideration into putting this program together, and the legislation that we have before us is very serious. It would essentially end the program as we originally conceived of it, as an ongoing universal commitment. And my first question is whether the administration has a position on whether or not we should continue the full-fledged program.
I would say, again, the intent of the college savings program, I believe, is shared by the executive. We want more post-secondary graduates. This program was a one path that we're trying to take to get there. The executive, again, understands the reason and kind of the end goal of this. But I would say also, in light of the press conference last week, there are some concerns as well about the finances of the county. And ultimately, if this program is not meeting the goals, then maybe there are better uses for the money. But I think that's what the a full evaluation could help us decide.
Okay. The second thing that I want to say is that the biggest concern that I personally have about the program is that the original intent was that there were expected to be a number of dynamic effects. In other words, that our investment of money was going to get other people to do things on a number of levels that would be helpful. It was going to get parents and extended family to make deposits. It was going to get outside organizations to set up programs to match some of the money that was put in by the county. It was going to get school districts to include college savings and financial literacy education as part of their curriculum. And as far as I can tell, so far very little of any of this has happened. And it might be that it's just not achievable, or it might be that we have not invested the amount of resources and effort needed to make these things happen. And to my mind, I don't think the status quo is a viable option. I think our two options are to either to up the ante in terms of the communications, the collaboration, the networking, the kind of things we're doing to see if we can actually bring about these dynamic effects that we had in mind and continue the program, or else the other option is to not go forward with the program as originally conceived. And the third and final thing that I would say is it comes off of the as you present to us. Apparently, we have not yet initiated the second cohort, and it would not seem to me to make sense to initiate the second cohort and then maybe in a matter of weeks later to decide that we're not going forward with the full-fledged program. And so if our decision is that we're not going forward, it would seem to make sense that we not go forward with the second cohort, and that we work with one cohort and not two cohorts.
Councilman Greenspan?
Sorry, Madam Chair, I'm not a member of the committee, so I'll defer to a committee member and then come back after.
Mr. Jones?
Ken, how much money have we encumbered for the program in total?
And so that includes the deposits for the two cohorts, because that has been put in. So that's, let me look. I want to say it's 3.2 million. It's the 1.5 each year plus a few $100,000 that we spend on the VistaShare contract, some of the marketing, the mailings and printing from the first cohort. And then for next year, it's budgeted, the budget has 1.7 million for the 15.
So
2015
3.2
budget.
million roughly?
Yes.
$3.2 million. And as you already said, the goal of the savings program was to increase post-secondary education participation from our county residents as mandated by our charter. And this was the attempt, the effort to accomplish that. I'll say this, I voted for this, and it was a close vote. It was a close vote, and I was one of those supportive votes. It was lukewarm. I'll say that my support was lukewarm, and I even said in committee, and I'll say again, as we try to target low-income families and individuals, my own experience said it's hard to have a pot of money saved when you're living at the poverty line, trying to just survive day to day. And it's a challenge to know that you have X amount of dollars reserved for the future when you're trying to live today. And I've seen it in my own business experiences. I've worked with low-income families trying to create savings for pre-funeral plans. Simple as that. And it just doesn't work in that way. So I had a fundamental reservation about the program from the beginning. And all votes, but having heard everything that was said over the last year about this, I did vote for it. And you make the best decision you can at the time that you make your vote. But when you start to move forward and you come to today, you have to again look and say, what decision will I make now? Will I maintain the status quo, or do we look towards doing something different? And I'm of the mindset that something different needs to be done. We are talking $3.9 million, $3.2 million, and the goal is still a good goal. And the question is, how do we use those dollars, and will those dollars be used in that capacity? The whereas clause talks about using these dollars again in that way, but we know what the whereas section means. This committee, this council can decide whether to draw back these dollars, leave these dollars, but the administration will determine how they want to execute using these dollars. So to Councilman Miller's question, where does the administration stand? Does the administration want or need time to craft how they would do something before I make my final decision on how I would like to proceed with this legislation? Where does the administration stand? Are they still committed to using these dollars in that way? If so, what are their intentions, the administration's intentions, and how do you accomplish that goal? I'll say this, fundamentally, I think trying to start with kindergartners and waiting 18 years before college actually is a reality, again, was for me a fundamental misstep. There are those much closer to the college age who could be engaged and help to do what we can to help them remain in school, to broaden their horizons and open their eyes to the opportunities that a post-secondary education provides. Helping those much closer to that moment certainly is, I think, part of the fundamental mix when it comes to increasing post-secondary education. But whatever that is, that's the administration will make those calls. So again, having said those things, my question really is, what is the administration's take again on this, and do they have a timetable? What are their thoughts? What is the administration's thoughts on their commitment to this $3.2 million being used in this way?
I'd say I definitely need to talk more in depth with the executive about the program and his views on it. Again, what it says in the legislation is it's up to council. We could do an evaluation within the first 5 years of this program. I think again, I know the executive has stated that the intent of the program he agrees with, but I think we probably need to evaluate still, what is this the right vehicle in order to get there. I mean, it sounds like there's definitely concerns from council, and I think that's feedback that I need to take back to the executive.
And I'll say this again in my final comment, more so than a question, is that just reviewing the stats that you shared with us today from the 4 individuals who exercised their option to use the 529 plan, these are individuals who already had some financial literacy about themselves. And again, one of the goals was to try to improve the financial literacy of those individuals that we were targeting. So it's been taken advantage by some, but again, those who we weren't truly trying to target. And again, to my estimation, when I hear someone savvy enough to take advantage of the $100, and I assume that means they added $400 to get to $500, they saw an opportunity. And again, they were financially literate enough to take advantage of an opportunity put there, which means to me, we did not penetrate the way we had hoped to penetrate those in need. So these individuals would have gone on to college anyway because they had already planned. They knew enough. So again, just for me, just what you shared today is enough to reinforce for me that I see us going in a different direction. What direction that is, I wait patiently to hear what your thoughts are, what the administration's thoughts are. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Jones. Before we go on to the next committee member, I just want to be clear. The charter does not mandate we do anything.
Okay.
It gives us a power if we so choose, but it doesn't require or mandate us to act. So that needs to be clear. We have no mandate. And we're very cognizant of the importance of education. That's why we put in place the Education Assistance Program, which includes College Now, which addresses the post-secondary college goal very well. We had a committee hearing last week,
Last week.
Just great statistics out of College Now. So we already have a program in place which accomplishes, at least on one end, the goal and the intent of this particular ordinance. So I just want to be clear that there's no mandate, but nonetheless, we are exercising our power to accomplish these goals. Okay, Councilwoman Brown, nothing? And in terms of the administration, we asked the position. We appreciate the feedback, but on the other hand, it was council that created this program really on our end, and we'll proceed on what we think is best. And are there more questions, Councilman Greenspan?
Great, thank you. I'm going to just actually clarify Mr. Schron's point, just because I have a calculator. So it appears that it's actually less than, or it's about 0.5% that actually participated in the program. Not to give more meat to that issue. Of the 51 or so that have made deposits, unique depositors, it's about 16,000. Do you have the breakdown as to if most of them are under 100, then somebody's got to be skewing the average pretty dramatically, right?
Yeah, so there was, deposits range from, again, there were some $10 a month to there was one person that deposited $5,000.
Okay, so that's the largest single account is one person at 5,000?
Correct.
Okay, all right. So far, and what have the total costs been in the program? If roughly $1 million or so has gone to set up these accounts, what are the total costs, and could you break them out, please?
Sure. So, if I can get you a more detailed breakout of that, the amount I mentioned before, but the $1.5 million for each cohort has been reserved because we were estimating at first about 15,000 accounts would be created each year. So that's the big portion of it.
Right.
The only other expenses actually have been fairly minimal. There's the printing and mailing costs, which to date have been around $70,000. The VistaShare contract was just under $30,000, which is the database that we use. And really beyond that, some of the marketing we do in conjunction with our March into Kindergarten campaign, some advertisements of the accounts. With that, last year we spent 40,000 on that. So it's not huge in terms of the other costs, other than potentially whatever staff time that we need to help.
And if I remember, the staff was 1.5 or 1 3/4
So
salary.
So we have a half-time person that works out of our Invest in Children early childhood office. And we have a person who was, again, budgeted for this program, who's based in our have our treasury investment group who as well. And then, a fraction of my time.
And all those costs are accounted. So when we get a report, and we look at the financials, the financial reports of the county, and this is compiled or segmented, are we going to see? We should see all the part-time and full-time employees, as well as an overhead allocation. So if you were to, obviously we can verify this, but if you were to come up with the total cost to administer the program, including salaries, overhead, marketing, Vista, mailing and printing, what's that number?
Total cost per cohort?
Well, you've only done one, so for the first one.
So I think that you want to know costs that have been incurred to date, or kind of what we expect going forward.
No, what have you spent?
Okay.
Past tense.
Past tense, gotcha. So I would need to break out. I mean, the salaries, the three people I've mentioned are in 3 different departments. So our salaries are being charged to different places. So the time spent on these are really kind of estimates. There's not anything that shows we don't keep timesheets by, I think, any of our projects. But I can give you estimates on what those are based on, what we feel were, the amount of time that we each of us spent.
Yeah, just to be understanding the legislation that's before this committee, and actually it's a pure justification of the program. I would anticipate that information would have been anticipated as a request based on how these meetings have gone in the past. It's something that would have been presented here today. So to say you're going to get it's fine, but you need to include the FTE, you need to include the salary as well.
I'll be happy to do that for you, Councilman.
So part of the legislation called for the creation of a committee to oversee the program. So in the 2 years or so that this program, from when the legislation was adopted till now, how many meetings has that committee had, your oversight committee?
So the committee wasn't actually formed until middle or so of last year. There's been one actual meeting and one that was been canceled. Okay. Trying to schedule those early on were definitely difficult.
And you testified, you said earlier that the legislation actually was adopted on what day?
And I believe it was April 23rd of 14.
Okay. So there's been one, so this is a major initiative. 13.
Sorry,
Yeah.
yes, 13.
So 2 years ago, this is a major initiative of the administration, and there's been one committee meeting in 2 years. That's a fact, right?
That is
There's been one committee meeting.
That is a fact, but we didn't start recruiting those committee members right from the day one, and without the other, quite honestly, was without the budget being approved, we wouldn't have been able to do this program, and that didn't happen until late October.
So those committee members are compensated?
They're not.
So what's the point, if the budget's approved or not, for them to begin planning a program that was legislatively adopted?
A program that might not ever get off the ground.
They're volunteers. The legislation enacted a committee to be formed, and they've met once in 2 years. I think it goes to the poor success of the program. Half of 1% is 60 times below the national average that you testified at a 3% participation rate in 529 plans. With 529 plans, do they mail out documentation to every eligible person to participate in a 529 plan? Does every state or bank mail out an application or a brochure?
I don't work for the Ohio Tuition Trust, sir, so I can't answer that question.
But we do. Does a 529 plan set up a bank account for everybody?
Not to my knowledge, no.
Do they send out deposit slips?
Not to my knowledge,
No.
no.
So we've done more to engage a population in a plan that is more dissimilar to a 529 plan than it's similar, and yet our participation rate is 60 times less.
One that's been open for over
Doesn't-
20 years now.
Doesn't
Right?
it's
The
irrelevant.
529.
It's irrelevant because they're not reaching out the way we reached out.
I know that they do have 5 people that go around statewide and do marketing, advertisement. There's banking professionals, investment people all over that they don't have to pay that also market 529 plans. You can go into a bank and see a 529 brochure. So while they may not be doing it directly themselves, there are other vehicles that are being used to help market 529s.
Absolutely, and at a much higher effective rate than ours, and we do more. So let me ask you this, and Mr. Miller touched on this earlier. One of the things that we heard early on in testimony prior to this being adopted was that there were going to be organizations that were lining up to participate, and there was discussion about how they could actually participate in the programs. There were terms of millions of dollars, not a vague reference to the millions of dollars statement, but a vague reference as to who would participate. What happened to all those private partnerships?
So I don't ever recall hearing the term millions in my time at the county, and that's never come out of my mouth. But we, I think, and I think to Mr. Miller's, Councilman Miller's point, yes, I think you need a lot of things working together in order to make this program successful. In my kind of advice when people have come to me and asked about getting these programs up and running, the thing I stress to them from the beginning is make sure the philanthropic community is on board from day one. I think that at the time that this program was announced, the philanthropic community didn't feel that it was, many of them, that this was aligning with the way that they wanted to invest their education dollars in post-secondary. So it was just the reality, they didn't come to fruition. Okay. We didn't have the philanthropic support generally from day one. There were a couple potential donors that we did go after that just didn't materialize.
So of the 4 people that transferred into a 529 plan, they took their $100 with them?
Yes, that was part of the.
Okay. So now that these accounts have been set up and you said, quote unquote, that they're live accounts, what's to prevent one of these live account holders from withdrawing the $100 from the account? The account's in their name, I presume, correct?
There's 2 things. The county is the custodian of the account. We have their master account and their account are sub-accounts under our master account. So their name is on the account, but they're not a named person, and they're all deposit-only accounts. They've been restricted at a key bank level.
So the transfer, then I'm assuming there's a document that's allows these individuals to transfer out?
Right. There's a internal process that we have. The people make the request. We verified with the Ohio Tuition Trust the accounts, and then through our treasury, we're able to move the money.
Okay. All right. I have no further questions.
I think Mr. Jones does, but I just wanted to comment because you said one of the reluctance of some of the population in the county to participate in this account or 529 accounts is because of the money's there for college and they can't use it if there's an emergency. It's the same thing with our account. right? They
Correct.
can't just pull their money out and use it.
Correct.
So the reluctance that we want to target or help, this is the same issue with 529.
Actually, let me clarify. So what was stated here is our deposit is restricted. Any of the money that the families put in, they can withdraw. We ask that they make a formal request and that there be some sort of true hardship but the reality is we can't hold their money. So
But it's still-
the county dollars.
I see.
Yes,
But it's
are
still, they
restricted.
still have to go through a process of some red tape to get their money back, and if they have to prove a hardship, and that's somewhat of an obstacle, I think, to penetrate the population, at least that I want to target, and we need to talk about that. I think Mr. Jones said it, it's the population that I want to see targeted are the ones who otherwise wouldn't be participating in 529 accounts, and it seems that what we are getting back are people who are educated, are participating in this, and we're leaving behind the population that we need to target with financial literacy and somehow enabling them to get to a place of college. And I'm not sure, I can tell you assuredly, as I sit here, this isn't the program that's going to accomplish the goals that when I voted for this, I wanted to accomplish. And it's long enough for me to see that this is not effective. When people need to eat, when people have housing crisis, they're not able to put the money in, and we didn't have the private investment that I was told that we should expect. So that, for me, is not enough to continue this. And is there time to not go forward with a second cohort?
My only hesitation, and I would want to check with our Department of Law about, if we basically committed this cohort by accepting the information. So that would be my only hesitation. So I'll be happy to make that request and confirm that there's no legal issues with not going forward with.
Are those accounts set up at KeyBank for the second group?
Not yet. They're
Okay.
not officially set up. No.
So what expectation would there be?
They're in the process of being set. So I think stopping it mid now. I mean, I could go back. The other thing I'll do is I'll check back with Key and verify kind of how can we undo that, what the process is to undo that.
Okay.
But I think my bigger concern is kind of the legal ability in order to do that. But I'll verify that with our Department of Law.
Okay, Councilman Jones. Mr. Jones and then Miller.
I would say whenever dealing with a low-income population and trying to target, it's not a light switch. I wouldn't want anyone to think that this couldn't work, because it can. It just has to be done the right way. Okay, so it definitely can work. I don't think this has been the right vehicle, but the right vehicle can be found. And the knowledge and expertise is here at the county because we've done it in many other areas. When dealing with, you just don't flip a light switch. It's more like a combination lock. You gotta listen to the people and turn that tumble and turn it back when it's not when it's not working. And I'll give you a few examples. The food pantries. Okay, when we want to get food to the most vulnerable people in this community, we don't do it from a corporate entity. We partner with small institutions, whether they are churches or other small nonprofits, and it's a partnership between the government and the church, or the government and institution, not politicized, just good service to the community. It's not a separation of the two, but they work together, and they distribute. The community comes in. It's an institution that they know, they trust, and they work with them. Sometimes those small businesses, those individuals. So you have to really penetrate the community in ways, again, the county has done already. So it's there. So whatever the new model is, let's lean on the experiences that, again, the county already has. This committee has approved a CTAG program. Again, individuals mentors who again, at a grassroots level, partner with the children of this county and of those that are in this pilot. And again, you have connections across this county with the targeted population. And if those things aren't built into whatever the model is, then you kind of get where we are now. So I'm not saying what it is, but again, to start to think about it and really, I think put a little more energy into it or thought into it than I think we actually had when it was crafted. I'll leave it at that.
Councilman Miller, then Greenspan.
Madam Chair, Mr. Surratt, you did the national survey and you referred to the 45 other programs that are out there. Based on your national survey, do you know of any other programs being initiated and then being discontinued?
Not to my knowledge.
Councilman Greenspan.
Thank you. Just, I had our staff put together a side-by-side comparison of 529 plans and our plan. And I'll pass it down. I mean, withhold it, but one of the items here on maximum investment, you said that you had one depositor who made a $5,000 deposit. Is that correct?
Correct.
According to our plan, the maximum per year deposit is only allowed to be $2,500. So what happened there?
So there on the deposit side, we don't have we don't have a control in order to when people come in and make a deposit to verify that it's more than $2,500. That's something that, again, we catch after the fact, and we we missed that one.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
So, are you finished? Okay, at this point in time, I just wanted to get a sentiment from the committee members and even those sitting here who are not officially on the committee, what their feeling is about this program and whether we would consider stopping the program, rescinding the program. And if we could do it now, that would be better, at least from this council person's standpoint. And if we are going to stop the program, whether it would be wise for us to take time to look at the global ways we can reinforce our attempts to reach our goals from different standpoints in a holistic way. When people can't eat, people can't pay for housing. I think little kids, I think an investment in children early on, looking at our ways to help the poverty conditions in the county and somehow partnering up with the agencies we have in place for literacy and things. I think we can do it in a global way. So I would like to take the time to look as we go forward in our budget to find ways we could address this. And if we even need to, we have college now, but I would like to see more investment in education, at least with the young children. So that would be my goal, not to jump into another plan or 529 sister plan, but wanted to get a feeling from the committee. Councilman Jones.
My feeling right now is that we need to hear more from the administration. I think that a change needs to happen, but we could simply shut this down or we could keep funding it. But what we can't do is tell the administration what to do, so to speak. We can't tell them how to, we can't tell, they're responsible for implementing the program, executing the program. So until the administration says, what they want to do, that's what I would ideally like to hear. In a perfect world, I'd like for, there be a slowdown on dollars towards this until the administration finds a more effective way to use these dollars. So what does that mean as far as a vote? Yeah. How do we accomplish that? If right now we're voting on whether we just close the program down or
You don't have to answer now. I just wanted to get a feeling. I don't think it's up to the administration to come up with necessarily a substitute for this. We can, as council, have an obligation to make a decision on a program that doesn't appear to be effective. When we passed this legislation, there were certain goals in mind, and I don't think we're going to reach those goals. And further, this is so unsustainable, right? I mean, there's no end to this. It's in perpetuity. We have in the legislation, maybe the 5-year and a 3-year look back, but this is not, we're not able to fund this. It's just not working. I don't think I have to wait for the administration to tell me it's not working, nor what a better program would be. The council is comprised of 11 very committed and intelligent and creative people. And if we choose to have a program, we can work on that. But in the meantime, as somebody who oversees this budget and how better way we can reach our goals, I'm not willing to continue on with this in this form. So if there was a vote on whether we're going to continue on, I just wanted to get a feeling from the committee whether that would be their feeling as well, and you don't need to commit today.
And again, I certainly am supportive of the concept of ending this program as it is today. Do I need to vote right now today? If the reality is, again, we do provide the funding, but it's their job to execute. That's,
Cut the funding.
one-on-one.
We can cut the funding.
We could
We
cut the
can
funding.
say that if this cohort now in process, we can cut that after hearing from the legal department, we can do that. Or we can say after this cohort, that will be it, which might be a fair way. We can get legislation that would address the 2 cohorts that we've already committed to, which I would be agreeable with, is just maintain our commitment to those 2 groups, 1 or 2 groups, and have legislation that addresses those kids. We have to, I believe. And then after those 2 groups, we don't have any further commitment to fund this, and I don't think it's wise.
Right, with the legislation in committee, we have the capacity anytime to end it. If the administration literally says, well, we don't intend to spend any more dollars, they haven't said that, but again, we have a new executive. He might want an opportunity to put his own fingerprint on this program and in a way that is more effective. I would certainly, and I'll leave it at this, I would certainly like to hear in a timely manner what they would like to do. And then if they wanted to keep this going, then I would probably vote to just close it down, to put it down. But if they came up with a viable solution that truly impacts this population, then I would do as the legislation says here. Let's use existing infrastructure to provide this needed service. It says in the 2nd paragraph of the whereas clause. I would be supportive of that. The 3rd paragraph says desire to encourage greater use of existing program infrastructure. 3rd whereas says the council desire to encourage greater use of existing program infrastructure utilized throughout the state to enable incentive savings for higher education.
Councilman Greenspan.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Well, real quick, and just to touch a little bit about what this does, what this ordinance does. It effectively does a couple things. The original intent, which I think is what we're talking about, insofar as promoting the value of post-secondary education and financial literacy, that was in the original legislation, is not impacted at all by this in concept. What it does say is, though, the county will dedicate up to $250,000 only with a private sector match. So if there is no private sector match, then there's no promotion of post-secondary or financial literacy. I based that on the statements made by the administration that there were millions of dollars out there coming into the program to help, which wasn't there. But if you believe in the concept of promoting financial literacy and post-secondary education, this provision preserves that original intent of the original legislation. What it does do, though, beyond that, is it does strip out the $100 fund, $100 per child, per kindergartner fund, and it does provide a provision for offers made to participants that they would have in this legislation at the end of this year to opt in to the program. If not, the money's returned to the county. Now, that's what the legislation does. It's very simple. It preserves the original intent. It encourages private sector participation in the promotion of financial literacy. Who could that be? It could be foundations that have a mission of promoting educational attainment. It could also be existing 529 providers, where they be banks primarily, the way I would envision this, we would take the current infrastructure that's supposed to be in place, has met once in 2 years, very challenging for me to believe that a major initiative of the former administration meets once in 2 years. It's mind-boggling to me that that's the intent, that's the extent of this program's implementation, was one board meeting in 2 years. It's embarrassing. It's embarrassing. But it would still preserve that original intent, assuming that people get off the dime and start working towards a goal. And it could be impactful, as you're suggesting, Mr. Jones. But but we can't continue to fund the $100. We're seeing half a 1% participation rate with an outreach to 10,500 people, and 55 actually make a deposit with deposit slips. The only thing more is driving to their home and taking them to the bank to make the deposit for them. I mean, I don't understand. I get it. I get the intent. The participation rate by itself has deemed this program to be ineffective, and it's 60 times less effective than a traditional 529 plan. The project's a failure. There's no other way to address it. I didn't mean to get on my soapbox and talk about that, but I want to explain the legislation has 3 components. Still promotes, eliminates the plan, and provides for the current cohorts to opt in by the end of the year.
So I just want to
But I'm willing
commend.
to amend this in any way.
I
I'm
would
just
like
saying-
to see it amended
Yes.
to address the 1 or 2 groups that we've committed to. But I just want to say, we've tried. I mean, this was an initiative that we supported for a lot of reasons, and there's no harm in trying something and looking outside the box, and there's no harm in that, but there's harm in my mind of continuing in perpetuity, at least for the next 3 to 5 years, a program that's not effective. So I give you a lot of credit, Ken, for everything you've done, and everybody who's worked on this, and you gave it a lot of time and effort. So there's no begrudgment on my end of supporting this or the efforts. It's just a question of, I think there's ways we can spend money to really accomplish the goal in other places. And I can name a few, but go ahead, Councilman Miller.
Madam Chair and my colleagues, the first thing that I would say is not only was this an initiative of the last executive, but he made it clear that this was one of his highest priorities. I have to say that while the council approved the program, I don't think we would have done so if it weren't for that this was a major executive initiative, and that we work as a two-way street, and that we needed to support what the prior executive wanted to do and give it a chance. I take an experimental approach to government. I think that government should be innovative and try new things. And if you're innovative and try new things, not everything that you try is going to work. And we have to be prepared for that. And it's good government involves not to have your feet stuck in concrete. And if you see that it's not working, you got to deal with that. As I said before, I think that we need to either find a way to truly create the dynamic effects that we're talking about, partly in light of what you said about the attitude of the philanthropic community. It seems unlikely, but and if we're not going to do that, or don't think we can do that, we should end the program. And I agree with the chair that I don't think we need to feel that we immediately have to come up with a replacement. There's a lot of demands for what we need to spend money on, and so we would just end it. I'm going to say one other thing, and on this point, I think the chair might somewhat disagree. But when we set this up, there were concerns raised about the amount of the administrative cost, that it was 25 or 30% or something in that range, and the answer that we got is yeah, it's that way initially, but as we bring in new cohorts over 10 or 15 or 20 years and spread the cost around, that the administrative cost is going to be reasonable. What I'm suggesting is that I don't think it's financially viable to maintain the program for 1 or 2 cohorts. I think that if we end the program, that we have to give some serious thought to what's a fair way to bring it to a close. I mean, do we provide the parents some options as to how they could spend the money within a certain length of time, for example, for tuition or school supplies or extracurricular activities or something like that, or you know, maybe for those that are truly interested and want to add dollars and want to have used this model, we maintain a small number, but I don't think to maintain thousands of accounts, if it's not going to be an ongoing program, I just don't think that's going to be cost effective, and we need to think about what's a fair, honorable, and decent way to honor the commitment that we made, but bring the program to a close so that we don't have a 25-year legacy administrative cost that we have to deal with.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments?
One, I do agree with that, and that there should be a just way in bringing it to a conclusion. But also, and I'll just repeat, what is the replacement? How do we do have $3.2 million on the table dedicated to a worthy goal. And to end it, I have, again, not heard from the administration. If it ends, then there's not $3.2 million towards a worthy goal. Will the administration commit to something being done? How do we transform this into something that's effective? Do we end it and then we could spend the $3.2 million downtown? You know? Yeah, no.
I think the money, it's not sitting, isn't this money that we're bonding out?
No.
It's all just sitting?
No, it's-
For two groups?
It's the money was reserved, or it's included, I shouldn't say reserved, it's included in the budget.
know.
Coming out of, it's not being bonded. It's just general.
It's general.
Out of
fund money.
two groups. Yeah,
Right.
for the 2
There
year.
were $2 million in 14 and 15 set aside in the budget.
So we need an exit strategy.
But
what we-
if I can, but
Exit strategy and an entry.
We'll discuss it. We'll come back and see what we do with this money. Maybe it's invest in children. We have programs that are very effective. I don't think we need to keep reinventing this wheel about programs that work.
no, and Madam
Go
President,
ahead.
Madam Chair, it's also important to note that we don't, look, what we do is independent from what the administration does. If we deem this program ineffective, we stop it. The administration or council could come up, you're right, Mr. Jones, we can come up with a program, the administration could not implement it. That you're 100% correct in that. So I understand your point in the administration coming forward with its program, but I wouldn't consider our vote to discontinue it contingent upon a plan they may have, because it may take them 6 to 8, 10 months to come up with an alternative program. But if the decision is now by council that this program is unsuccessful and we wish no longer to continue funding it, we need to cut it today. Give the administration opportunity, or members of council in collaboration with the administration, to bring forward another plan, but I wouldn't make the vote to discontinue contingent upon a plan, an alternate plan. Just my own opinion.
Madam Chair.
I would like to have heard something.
I agree with Councilman Greenspan that when we act, it's not contingent on anything having, and it's okay, I haven't heard anything. They're just getting situated still. And we heard from Ken, he's part of the administration, so we've heard something. In terms of the bonding out, I mean, going forward, beside these two cohorts that we budgeted for, I mean, I don't know, this is not sustainable coming out of our general fund. It's just, in perpetuity, there's no way to do it, other than to maybe go out to bond. So any other comments from the council, and then Carlton? Wait, Mr. Miller?
The only other thing, I said that when this program was created, it was a two-way street between the administration and the council, and I would say that it's still a two-way street. You know, yes, we have the purse strings and we have the authority to just cut it off if we want to, and we could do so. But I think that it's a major program. It's an important decision, and if possible, the executive and council should jointly decide on what we want to do, and I do think that that we should continue to be involved in promoting this general goal, but we probably would not immediately know what we want to do. So if we got to end this program, we just end this program, and then we go forward from there and see if there's other alternatives available.
Just one further comment, and I don't see a representative from our law department here. You made reference that terminating the program might cause, there's some questions regarding terminating the current cohort. Between now and the next committee meeting, is it possible to have an opinion? I don't want to say an opinion, but an opinion from the law department as to what it would take and what the liabilities are.
My plan was to ask that question as soon as I got back to my desk.
All right, thank you.
Okay, Carlton, from the
Hi.
administration.
Yes, Carlton Laster, Special Assistant for Regional Collaboration. Thank you, Madam Chair. First of all, I would like to just simply address Mr. Surratt. Thank you for his hard work on this program on the administration's behalf. I could easily say that this is an inherited program, however, and it's thrown upon our lap at this current situation. However, the fact is that we are now responsible for this in conjunction and collaboration with the council. And so with that being said, the administration's intentions are very clear in terms of education. Higher education is a key and fundamental societal and economic driving factor for this county moving forward, and that ultimately the goal towards that should be to address the needs of those in minority and underserved populations who are currently experiencing a gap between attainment of that, and to come up with a vehicle of some sort in collaboration with council to achieve that. But however, as the data has shown, this program is currently unsustainable in its current matter. I can't speak for the county executive directly, but I do know personally for myself, speaking on behalf of Regional Collaboration, that I would not there are many aspects of this program that are going to be abandoned. However, I don't want to think of this as an abandonment. It's more of a long-term reassessment of how we can better restructure this program to meet a greater need, and a need that's actually tangible in implementation, so that we can make the to quote the biggest bang for our buck in terms of this, in terms of reaching out to these populations and these children. In terms of what Councilman Schron had mentioned when he used the anecdote of in his personal company, there are a lot of people who currently don't necessarily trust banks. I think that if this program were to be reconfigured in a similar outline, I think that it would be our goal in regional collaboration to reach out to a lot of those credit unions, local credit union associations, because if we can't get the banks on board and if we can't get the philanthropic partners on board, definitely the local credit unions would be an avenue to examine in the long term, as well as personally for regional collaboration. We have met within the last month with ESC, the Educational Service Center, and with members of Family and Children's First Council, FCFC. And that might be a potential housing place for such a program to create the framework and the tangible structure to operate fiscally and operationally for a future program, whether it's a college savings account or some other vehicle for higher education attainment in the future. But like I said, I feel obligated and my own personal duty to address a lot of the council's questions in some way, shape, or form in relation to the administration stance. Though I am not the county executive, I can say that this program is unsustainable in its current form. It has a lot of flaws. However, this should not be an abandonment from the goal itself of helping these children achieve higher education, but there needs to be just a long-term reassessment. I can't give you a definite timetable as to how long that will be or what it will look like, but it's definitely a priority, and I wanted to stress that upon all the members of council so that they know that this is a priority for this administration, for the Department of Regional Collaboration, and that we have taken some initial steps to work with Ken and others on this matter. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Nobody's not supporting education in this room. I don't think any person in this room does not have that as a goal, but we have a very effective program with College Now, which is really a model, I think. So if that's our goal, I think we need to look more closely at that. But I agree with Councilman Jones and Miller that we would like to hear from the administration on this, because we worked with them at the beginning, and we want a definitive response about whether this program, they would like to see it continue, or the executive. I hear from Regional Collaboration and from Mr. Surratt, who's now our housing person / education too. Which, yeah.
In transition.
Okay, in transition. So at the next meeting, we do want a response that would be very helpful to this committee, and we'll be coming back in a couple weeks to hear from the administration on their position, as well as how the committee wants to proceed with this particular program. And with that being said, thank you, Mr. Surratt.
Thank you.
Any other comments from the committee? Okay, miscellaneous business, none, except we're coming back in a couple weeks. And public comment?
No, Madam Chair, no one
Okay,
signed in.
we're adjourned. Thank you.